My topic for the day is long-term performance versus short-term performance and how to balance member expectation and uncertainty. So this topic really took me back to a couple of years ago when I was still working for Alexander Forbes. This used to be my daily bread, where we would sit with the team and try and decide really how do you balance these two things. If you look at members, all what the member wants is really returns. They just want to see all green, just upward performance relative to the benchmark. They just want to see green. They don't want to see any red. But at the same time, we're saying to the members, we want to take your fund credits and expose them to a bit of risk so that we can get a return and meet your net replacement ratio. So now, how do you balance these two things? One of them, the objective that they want a return, but at the same time, for you to get that return, you have to expose the assets to a bit of risk. I mean, fund credits, if you look at the different asset managers, a good portion of it goes into equities, a good portion of it goes into alternatives. Inherently, there's going to be uncertainty. So the question really is, how do you then bring that uncertainty to a level that is acceptable to our members? As trustees, we are far removed from our members. How many times as us trustees have we said to a member, your portfolio is only down by 0.5%. Why are you worried? It's only down by 0.5%. So really, as trustees, we are far removed. And I'm going to pose just a few questions to the trustees. Not that I'm expecting answers, but I just want us to reflect, to say, as trustees, both member and employer, when was the last time that you actually sat with a member to say, member, do you know why your portfolio is down by 0.5%? Or let's make it easy, because nobody wants to talk about underperformance. When was the last time you sat with a member to say, do you know that your portfolio is up 2% because of 1, 2, 3? When was the last time, as a member trustee or employer trustee, did you actually sit with a member to say, the fund objective is CPI plus 3 because of 1, 2, 3? We don't do that. And as a trustee, we're in a position of trust. And by us not sitting around with our members and explaining some of these things, we're actually in breach of that trust. So the question is, how do we balance member expectation and uncertainty? So there are really two ways in which you can balance it. The first one, as trustees, is really communication. Communicate with the members. Let it be a dialogue, not just pushing information. The members need to know what we're thinking as trustees. The members need to know the strategy of the fund. The members need to know how the fund is performing. Because if you're going to be giving somebody information, maybe, for example, on a quarterly basis, you update your members. The next quarter, you update your members. Then the third quarter, you update your members. When they actually get that statement from the administrator at the end of the year, they'll not be surprised when they see that the fund is on the negative. So communication is very, very key. And then how do you deal with uncertainty? We can only deal with uncertainty, like I've said, we have to bring it down to acceptable levels. How do we do that? It's through product. The types of portfolios that we choose as trustees for the members, that is how you bring uncertainty down to acceptable levels. So we need to go through a journey as trustees to say, either we break down the walls of the ivory tower, or we engage in a process where now we would start to see members scaling up to the top of the ivory tower and have a clearer view and sit in the same space where we're sitting as trustees and have information, because it's only through information that you're going to be able to manage your member expectation. I think the starting point really to know what your members are expecting from you as trustees is to actually sit back and know your members. A lot of us, we don't know our members. We don't know our member demographics. So we need to sit and apply ourselves to the data that is in front of us to say, who are our members? How many of our members are between the age of 20 and 30? How many of our members are between 40 and 50? How many of our members are close to retirement? Because if you know that, then you are able to now start to apply yourself as a trustee to say, Somebody who is close to retirement, this is what they are expecting. Somebody who is very far from retiring, this is what they are expecting. So when I started working in 2011, like I said, I've worked for Alexander Forbes. I was really young, and at the time the MD was Paul Masuga. He was old, he was old. I was young and handsome, but we're in the same fund. So, and when you're in the same fund, all of us, yes, we had a common goal, which was a dignified retirement, to earn as close as possible to your salary when you retire. I know the administrators and consultants, they've got a term for it. They call it the net replacement ratio. So we all had that goal where we want to get to that 70% or the 75% or whatever. So if you look at Paul, and if you look at me, our expectations really differ. And how we look at performance, whether it's long-term or short-term, it's very different because of where we are in our stage in life. We are very different. Him, because at the time he was supposed to retire, he was about to retire, his investment horizon was much shorter compared to my investment horizon. And because of that, I had the patience to be able to sit through the different market cycles. That for him, because he was closer, he would be more concerned with the short-term performance, as opposed to somebody who's still young and has that horizon. Now, because of that, as I've indicated, expectation changes as you age. Now, if you look at the two different people in your fund, you realize that the ability and willingness to take risk is different for the members. Solely because of where they are in that stage of life, the investment horizon, what they've accumulated over time. So it's really, really different. Not so long ago, we actually, as people who had cash, we're actually earning negative yield on our cash. That meant that you're actually paying somebody to hold your cash for you. So if you look at all these asset classes, there is risk. So how do we bring it down to an acceptable level? So if you look at where we went in 2003, if you had invested 100 pula on the S&P, in 2007, you would have went up to 142 pula. And then the next year, you would have been down to 90. But again, over time, you would see that you've actually started with 100, you are now sitting at 404. But then the question is, as trustees, are we communicating these to our members? That we are in this game for long term. Yes, we're going to have short term ups and downs, but we are in it for the long term. Are we communicating that effectively as trustees to our members? That's the question that we need to answer. Now, we've talked about uncertainty and bringing it to an acceptable level. You can do that by how you structure your portfolios as trustees of the fund. So there are a whole lot of portfolios and how you can blend them. And there's just a few things that I've seen what other funds are doing in the market, where you've got a growth portfolio, and then you're saying, you're only able to do this if you know your member demographics, and you're saying, I've got members who are between 20 and 40. I know these members, they've got the ability and they're willing to take risks. I know these members are concerned more about the long term. So why don't I put them in a portfolio that will give them growth? So if you look at the asset allocation of the growth portfolio, you'd see that about 50% of that portfolio will be invested in equities, and then you've got 15% that goes into alternatives. These is meant really to give somebody who is more concerned about long-term that upside take. And now when you move from the growth portfolio to the far right, you'd see that even the risk itself changes. And what I'm saying here is member expectation changes again with time. And as somebody ages, as trustees, we need to start thinking, how do you de-risk this member and move them from the growth portfolio to the preservation portfolio or to the pre-retirement portfolio, somewhere in between. If you look at the pre-retirement portfolio, equities, there's about 35%. And then alternative is about 8. Again, even if you look at alternatives, you'd see that what you pick within the asset class is different. For the growth portfolio, you'd see that in the alternatives you have private equity, you have hedge funds, you've got currency play and other things. And then within the pre-retirement portfolio, when you're about to retire, would potentially there in the alternatives would put things like property. So as trustees, we need to now start building mechanism to say, if somebody is between the age of 20 and 50 years, maybe for example, where again, they've got a long tenor, expectation, they are willing to take risk, they've got the ability to take risk, they are patient and can sit through the different market changes. Let's have them in the growth portfolio. And then when they get to 50, then let's put in an automatic trigger where we'll start moving that members' credits from the growth portfolio into a transition stage where they're moving from the growth portfolio to the pre-retirement phase. We can do that over 5 years, over 3 years, however long. It's a discussion really between the trustees and the members. But what I'm saying here is that let's take that member through a de-risking process, because you know that the member expectation has changed. You definitely need to have advisors where members would be able to go if they need advice in putting together those two portfolios. But I think what is then important is, again, as trustees, we need to be working with the members to let them know that short term, there's going to be a lot of volatility, and it doesn't mean that because the market has went down, you should be moving from one product to the other. Set it through, you are in it for the long game. But like I've said, a lot of members in developed markets are increasingly becoming more and more involved in the types of instruments that they're invested in. So I've just put together, in conclusion, it's just a couple of slides around us as FNB Staff Pension Fund and our journey in terms of just trying to balance these two things. So I've compared the fund to an orchestra. And you know that in an orchestra you've got different people or different, I don't know what you call them, these guys who play instruments. But they all have to play together for us to get that sweet melody that we pay at the entrance to hear. They all have to play in unison. So this is how we as trustees, we all need to collectively work together and get information across to the members. At the center of the orchestra, you've got the conductor. Now, the conductor behind closed doors, he leads training. Once he gets on top of the stage, he looks at the orchestra and he guides them. He sets the tone, he unifies them, he directs the music, all with the use of his hands. And you realize that the man, there's a saying that says the man who leads the orchestra must turn his back on the crowd and solely focus. So as trustees, we need to do that. We know that we know what our members want through the different processes and the data that we have in front of us. We know the type of uncertainty or the level of uncertainty that they want. So we need to apply ourselves to ensure that we match the two and we communicate it effectively to the members in terms of what is that we're doing. And then we've got various policies that talks about the different products and how we look to address uncertainty. We've got our investment policy document. It will talk about the growth portfolio. It will talk about the retirement portfolio. It will talk about the switch. We've got other committees in place. The communication policy, the communication committee, really that talks to how we get information and get it across to the members. Now, in an orchestra, the people who just sit right in front of the conductor is what you call the string family. Similarly, we have done a similar thing at FNB Staff Pension Fund, where we have taken the benefits and communication policy and put it in front of the members and saying, please, you are in the front line. communicate to the members what is it that we're doing, and also give us feedback. And what they have done recently, and again in conjunction with administrators, that they have actually included the FNB Staff Pension Fund into our intranet, into the bank's intranet. What that allows for is for effective communication with the members. We give them information, we give them the trustee reports and everything. We talk about our performance, we talk about long term, we talk about what is happening short term, and we talk about our views. And then you've got the Brass family, which is HR, important stakeholders. We work with them to get information across. There are different, where I work FNB, we've got what we call the Kotla system, which is pioneered by HR. So as the trustees, we try and reach out to the members through the HR channels which are already in place. And just to ensure that, again, we are communicating and we're getting information across to the members, what is happening short term, what is happening long term, where do we see the risk, and stuff like that. And then we've got risk and compliance. They're there. We call them the critics. They're there. Their job is to check when was the last time these committees went out to explain performance to members. The Finance and Investment Committee meeting, did you see so and so? Did you send your report out to the trustees? Are we ticking all the boxes? The investment policy document, which talks about uncertainty and when was the last time it was actually reviewed? Things like that. So we've got the risk and compliance that do that for us.